Welcome to AK Anime Explainer. Today is explanation of Soul Land 3, Legend of the Dragon King Part 300. Without any delay, start explanation. We're here. The taxi stopped. The driver looked at the young couple through the rearview mirror. The girl was remarkably beautiful. She had a heroic air about her, unlike a beach girl. She seemed somewhat aloof. Compared to her, the young man had average looks. His eyes were his only outstanding features. Long Yushue paid the driver while Tang Wulin got off the taxi before her. The sea lay before him. It had no boundaries, seemingly. Long Yushue got down the taxi on the other side. She walked over to his side. Just then, the driver poked his head out from the window. "Young man, you should take the initiative after a quarrel. You must know how to treat your woman right, you know." Ha ha. The driver then hit the gas and sped off into the distance with a whoosh. Tang Wulin was stunned. He turned to look at Long Yushue. Long Yushue's beautiful face was slightly reddened. "You've not spoken a word to me along the way. We must have given the impression that we're a couple who just had a fight." Tang Wulin scratched his head awkwardly. She did not know why, but when she saw his cute actions, Long Yushue could not help laughing. He was in disguise, but why was he still this attractive? Could it be that he was deeply ingrained in her heart? "I grew up by the shore. Seaside cities hold a special meaning for me. Sky Sea City is the largest city in the East Sea. I took part in a competition here when I was little. This is where I met Xinglan and Lishi for the first time. They were representing Shrek Academy. Xinglan was quite an opponent then. They are also members of the Shrek 7 monsters." Long Yushue had just met the other members of the Shrek 7 monsters. She was not familiar with them. Tang Wulin nodded. In the blink of an eye, almost a decade has passed. How time flies. "Hey, you're only in your 20s, okay? Don't talk like an old geezer." Tang Wulin replied, "That's just a show of how mature I am. Look there. That's the famous port of Sky Sea City. It's the largest port in the East Sea. It's the reason behind Sky Sea City's development. Now, a large part of it is used for military purposes. Soon, an invasive war will commence here." Long Yushue ventured, "You seem to hate wars very much." Tang Wulin said, "Many people die in a war. Many more are orphaned or lose their loved ones. Wars are created for profits. I think it's cruel to sacrifice the lives of others to benefit oneself. You're right, I hate wars very much, and I hate the great powers even more. When I was still a small child, my parents were abducted by an unknown great power and forced to work for them. I've no idea where they are even now. I wanted to be a soul master when I was younger. My achievements today are the result of my parents being taken away from me, which has led me to cultivate tirelessly. The Federation has always upheld fairness and freedom. Sad to say, there never was any fairness nor freedom in this world." Long Yushue said, "Then, what kind of world would you like ours to be?" Tang Wulin said with a bitter smile, "Actually, I'm not sure myself, and that's the truth. I don't have any visionary ideals. I only hope that I can help lessen the pain for as many people as I can." Long Yushue said, "You're doing well. During the Abyssal Plains invasion back then, If it weren't for you, maybe our blood god army would have lost and the abyssal army would have taken over the Federation already. That would be a real tragedy where all life will be reduced to ashes. Although the others are not aware of it, I know for sure that you're a hero. You're the hero who saved the Federation. Tang Wulin laughed in spite of himself and said, "It doesn't matter to me whether I'm a hero or not. I only have a few wishes. I want to find my father, mother, rebuild Shrek Academy and the Tang sect headquarters, and then..." He paused in mid-sentence. Then what? Although Long Yushue could guess, she could not stop herself from asking. After she blurted out her question, she regretted it. Then I'll be with her, and we'll have our own home. Tang Wulin's gaze suddenly became gentle. Yes, all he wanted was to have a home. It was his life's dream. He wanted to be with his loved one, parents, and perhaps even have kids of his own. Long Yushue's vision blurred, but she could see the gleam of tears in his eyes. She had not expected him to be sentimental. Neither was she jealous, much to her surprise. Instead, she was heartbroken. She stepped forward to give him a hug. Currently, all she could think of was to console him. She wanted to tell him that if that person could not give him a home, she would be more than happy to fill the person's place. Tang Wulin was slightly stunned from Long Yushue's embrace. At that very instant, a strong sense of foreboding filled him. It made his hair stand on end. Without hesitation, Tang Wulin hugged Long Yushue with one arm and leaped to the side. With a single leap, they landed behind a sand dune. Boom! The intense sound of an explosion came from the sea surface far away. Tang Wulin's and Long Yushue's ears were buzzing. The other sounds in their surroundings were veiled. Shortly after, the sand dune beside them turned yellow and was scattered everywhere. The intense shockwave had impacted them directly. Tang Wulin's reflexes were extremely quick. His golden scales instantly covered his body. At the same time, he shielded Long Yushue's body with his own. He rode on the shockwave's momentum and leaped. They landed further away. If he had been an ordinary person, he would have been torn to shreds when the shockwave hit. It had swept away everything in its path. However, Tang Wulin had a strong body. To him, a shockwave of such strength was just a powerful shove. Out of the blue, he and Long Yushue saw a billowing wave. At this instant, his vision turned peculiar. The sky seemed to be an ocean which they were flying through like a vast world under the sea. Tang Wulin extended his golden dragon wings behind him. Riding on the momentum, he beat his wings forcefully as he brought Long Yushue along. Together, they shot forward like an arrow. Nonetheless, the billowing wave had appeared too suddenly, and it covered an amazingly wide area. In the end, it fell from the sky and crashed onto them. A bluish light barrier appeared silently. It enveloped them the instant the seawater came crashing down. Long Yushue was surprised that the seawater around them could not penetrate the light barrier. Without her noticing it, a trident-shaped rune had appeared on Tang Wulin's forehead. A faint bluish light was pulsing in the center of the rune. Tang Wulin himself could not make any sense of this. However, it did not affect his reflexes. He beat his golden dragon wings again and broke the surface with Long Yushue in tow. They rose into the air, but their bodies were completely dry, untouched by the seawater. Currently, Tang Wulin's gaze was as sharp as ever. The lost and meek look he had just now was gone. He was careless and his emotions had fluctuated greatly just now. He did not sense the danger with his spiritual power, which was apparently very sensitive. Perhaps it was not directed at him. Still, he should have sensed it before it came. Currently, the huge waves in the sea were like those of a tsunami. Although the epicenter was far away, he could clearly see the terrifying energy shockwave erupting in the air in the middle of the ocean, accompanied by thunderous explosions. Countless shards were scattered throughout in a faint, dark purplish light. A giant whirlpool with a diameter of about 1 kilometer appeared in the ocean. The dark purplish light was pulsing. Fixed soul ammunition. Only fixed soul ammunitions could have such terrifying destructive power. It must have been rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. It would not have such power otherwise. A black battleship which was docked at the port was blasted to smithereens by the rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. 2 other purple destroyer escorts were capsized by the huge waves. Fortunately, the battleships were not anchored close to each other. A surprise attack? Someone had attacked the Federal fleet with rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. In the Federal fleet, there was a red mothership, black battleships, purple destroyer escorts, yellow gunboats, and white patrol ships. Although the battleships were of the same rank, they had different equipment. A fleet was made up of various battleships with a mothership as the core. Currently, there were 3 mothership fleets that were docked near Sky Sea City's waters. The entire Federation had at most 3 mothership fleets. These 3 mothership fleets were stationed here in preparation for the war against the other 2 continents. They were all equipped with state-of-the-art facilities. Who would have expected that they would be attacked at such a time? Moreover, the perpetrator had employed forbidden weapons such as rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. For a time, the seawater surged and crashed against the shore as in an apocalyptic scene. The center of the ocean was bursting forth with an intense energy storm. Tang Wulin had personally experienced the force of rank 9 fixed soul ammunition in Shrek Academy. He knew deep down how devastating such man-made weapons were. Even the Golden Tree and a number of Shrek Academy's top experts could not withstand the force of the Godkiller rank fixed soul ammunition. That was the horror of human technology. A few researchers had once said that if technological advancement were to continue at such a pace, the human race might one day be destroyed by their own advanced technology. The rank 9 fixed soul ammunitions had been developed 10,000 years ago. However, there was only a handful of them. They were absolutely tactical weapons. These weapons had not been used in thousands of years. Nonetheless, Tang Wulin had already seen with his own eyes its destructive powers twice in the span of a few years. He was not sure if he should consider himself lucky. Contrary to the shock that filled Tang Wulin's heart, Long Yuxue was currently filled with a different kind of feeling. What with the roaring waves and terrifying energy storms, everything seemed apocalyptic in her eyes. Never mind all that, she was currently in the embrace of a strong arm. She could clearly feel the dense blood essence shockwave emanating from his body. It enveloped her, thus protecting her from the energy impact. The destructive forces could not touch her as they only skimmed past her. She felt safe and warm. His embrace was the best refuge she could ask for. As long as he was around, any situation they encountered would not be a problem. Her pent-up emotions finally had an outlet after so long. Long Yuxue even felt that her sacrifices in the past were worth it. Her feelings were clear and filled with comfort. She no longer had any interest in what was happening outside. Instead, she closed her eyes and lost herself in his masculine and dense blood essence shockwave. She wrapped her arms around his waist tightly. Although they were separated by a layer of dragon scales, she wished they could continue like this forever. He beat his wings behind him. After a brief inspection, Tang Wulin flew toward the faraway shore with Long Yuxue in tow. They could not stay here for too long. Since the Federal mothership fleet was suddenly attacked, he reckoned that the entire military force would be enraged. Sky Sea City would be shut down in the next few days. Any suspicious person on the shore would surely be arrested. If they were discovered, they would be in great trouble too. All suspicious persons would surely be investigated thoroughly. After a brief moment of shock, Tang Wulin sprung into action. He figured out a way to escape with Long Yuxue. The tsunami continued its rampage. It practically smashed every building along the seaside. Fortunately, there was a huge dam on the shore which took most of the impact. The damage in Sky Sea City was limited. The deafening siren blared just when Tang Wulin and Long Yuxue flew toward the shore. The battleships were putting up their protective barriers as they swayed from the wave's impact. For a while, the sea's surface shone with the radiance of the protective barriers. All the battleships had white protective barriers. Each battleship's protective barrier was based on the rank of the battleship. The moment the siren blared, all the military radars were activated. Fighter aircraft shot into the skies. A large number of mechas were also launched from the battleships. Tang Wulin's spiritual power was indeed powerful. He did not have to use his eyes to see that all of this was happening. This was the terrifying might of the federal military force. Millions of mechas surged out like a swarm of bees. Occasionally, when he looked behind him, he could see a few red figures flitting past. The fighter aircraft was taking off in succession. In no time, the radars covered an area of hundreds of miles which included the waters. It was incredibly horrifying. Every mothership fleet was like a great porcupine. The two purple battleships had been pulled upright. However, the black battleship, which had no defensive equipment, was badly hit and had sunk completely. Only the remnants of the battleship were seen on the sea surface. Tang Wulin had no time to be awed by the destructive force of the rank 9 fixed-sol ammunition. He felt that he was within the radar's range. After all, he was still human no matter how fast he could fly. The radar sweep of a large area could be done in an instant. A moving entity such as him would be difficult to miss. There were at least 100 mechas targeting him and Long Yushue, and they were headed toward them. Tang Wulin was not worried about the mechas. With the explosive power of his golden dragon wings, it would not be a problem for him to lose them. The more frightening thing was that there were fighter aircraft which had locked onto their positions. Tang Wulin knew how to pilot a fighter aircraft. Naturally, he knew full well the speed of a fighter plane. Once they were discovered, it would be impossible to shake them off. Not to mention a Sol Doluor such as himself, even a title Doluor could not fight against the Federation's military force. He needed to find a way to escape. Tang Wulin made the decision in the blink of an eye. He suddenly pulled Long Yushue into his embrace. The sudden movement caused Long Yushue some pain since her body was in a tight hug. When Tang Wulin locked his arms, he retracted his golden dragon wings behind him. A dark yellowish glow came over his body. All of a sudden, he dropped toward the ground like a meteorite. He was at an altitude of 100 meters. He fell at a shocking speed. Under the cover of his body's yellowish glow, his falling momentum increased greatly. Boom! Long Yushue felt her body shake violently. If Tang Wulin had not hugged her tightly and protected her with his energy, she reckoned that she would have been knocked out by the impact. Then, she felt the air around them thinning. She found it difficult to breathe. She was a Sol Emperor rank battle armor master. Although she was shocked, she hastily utilized her own soul power. She controlled her breathing to reduce her consumption of oxygen. Currently, she had woken up from her coquettish demeanor. She immediately registered the situation they were facing. Simply put, they were caught in a crossfire. Regardless of who initiated the surprise attack, they were bystanders who had survived the attack. Furthermore, they were soul masters. They would most certainly be the subjects of investigation. Whether it was Tang Wulin or her, their identities had to be kept secret. They could not afford to be investigated by the authorities. Hence, they had to escape. They could not allow themselves to be caught by the Federal Army. However, Sky Sea City, where the military forces were gathered, was like an inescapable prison. Almost all of its territory was covered by radar. It was truly difficult for them to escape under such circumstances. Even so, Tang Wulin had chosen to run. Sensing the thinning air around them, they should be deep underground at the moment. They were moving underground. Although Long Yushue did not know how Tang Wulin had managed this, it was undoubtedly the best way. They were trapped by the fighter aircraft and mechas in the air, and the radars were locked onto their positions. They could only escape detection from the radars by going deep underground. It would not be easy to deploy the seismic radars which would buy them time. Tang Wulin and Long Yushue needed the time to escape. What Tang Wulin had activated was the Mountain Dragon King's torso bones ability, the gravitational control. The Mountain Dragon King was of the earth element itself. He relied on his great strength to dash into the earth and used his massive body to control his speed when rapidly drilling underground. His hands were full from protecting Long Yushue, so he could only use the sharp edges of his wings to open up the soil. His physical capabilities were far beyond human standards. Soon, they had bored dozens of meters into the ground. It would be very difficult even for a seismograph radar to detect their presence so far down, and the result would be quite blurry in any case. However, it was not easy either to move at such depth, leave alone control his speed. At this time, Tang Wulin's incredible spiritual power played an extremely important part here. He relied on his perception of the earth attribute to sense the underground structure thousands of meters around him. He soon found a subterranean river. He gripped Long Yushue as he drilled his way toward it and allowed the water to carry them along. Even though the river did not flow swiftly, moving through water was much faster than soil. The sense of danger vanished gradually and Tang Wulin felt relieved. However, it was also at this moment when he suddenly sensed something was not right with Long Yushue in his arms. Their journey had already lasted for a rather long period of time. From the violent shock she felt when Tang Wulin dashed underground to the suffocating feeling later on, Long Yushue endured the whole ordeal quietly. Even though she had a Soul Emperor cultivation base, her body's endurance was much less than Tang Wulin's. Her ability to regulate her soul power made her capable of holding her breath for a longer period of time, but it was apparent that she had already exceeded it. She was especially affected after suffering such a violent shock in addition to the change of her mind and spirit. At the moment, her body had already begun to feel slightly stiff while her life fluctuation was beginning to weaken noticeably. Oh no! Still in shock, Tang Wulin hastily lowered his head to look at Long Yushue. He relied on his purple demon eyes and found Long Yushue's eyes tightly closed and her charming face ghastly pale, like paper with green-purple undertones. It was clear that she was suffocating. At this point, Tang Wulin dared not slow down and he put everything else out of his mind. He hastily lowered his head and kissed Long Yushue's delicate lips to pass her a breath of vital essence. The mysterious heaven method that he cultivated was known for its sustained vitality. In addition to his body sect training and powerful cultivation, the dual cores and dual circulations that were formed in his body allowed him to hold his breath for a very long period of time without any trouble. Long Yushue was brought back from the edge of danger after receiving Tang Wulin's breath of life. Her body had obviously relaxed while the heaving of her chest began to become more intense. Her lips were soft and fragrant, but Tang Wulin could not care less about enjoying the moment. He accelerated and relied on his memory to move in the direction of their quarters at full speed. He used his spiritual power as his eyes to observe the situation on the ground. He finally found a slightly more deserted street and carried Long Yushue as they headed there. Their lips parted when both of them broke through the soil. Tang Wulin was not bothered by his disheveled look. He immediately took Long Yushue to hide by a building while retracting his soul power to avoid being discovered by the soul power detection equipment in the high-grade radar. Long Yushue panted loudly, but her beautiful eyes remained fixed upon Tang Wulin the whole time. He kissed me. He kissed me. Even though she understood that it was a matter of expediency, at that exact moment, her heart was filled with waves and ripples of emotions. She had already forgotten about the pain of suffocating as if it was cast into the wind. Tang Wulin brushed the soil off his body. He could not utilize his soul power, so it was not as easy to get rid of all of it. Just then, the sound of sirens was already echoing through all of Sky Sea City. He could even figure out with his feet that Sky Sea City would be governed by military control for a very long period of time next. This would be extremely troublesome for them. He would ponder about this more when he returned. Tang Wulin turned on his soul communicator. He hesitated for a moment before sending out a signal for everyone to gather. "Are you okay?" asked Tang Wulin to Long Yushue. Long Yushue shook her head, but she did not speak anymore as she allowed the unusual emotions to sink into the bottom of his heart. "Let's go back quickly. I'm afraid that there will be some changes to the plan. No matter the target of this attack, we must hide first," said Tang Wulin in a deep voice. The general public was unaware of the situation. A loud boom that echoed through the entire city followed by the piercing siren would inevitably result in fear and chaos. At once, the people on the streets were all bustling about. Tang Wulin and Long Yushua seized the chaos to return to hotel hastily. Everyone had already returned upon receiving Tang Wulin's signal. "Captain, what's going on?" Yu Jinyu could not refrain himself from asking upon seeing Tang Wulin's disheveled look. Tang Wulin spoke in a deep voice, "I don't have time to explain too much. I've already contacted people from the Tang sect. We must move." Someone used rank 9 fixed soul ammunition to attack the Federal fleet earlier at the naval port. A black battleship was bombarded and sank. "I'm afraid that Sky Sea City will be filled with danger at every turn within a short amount of time, so we'll need to conceal ourselves better." Rank 9 fixed soul ammunition. All 6 of the other monsters had a change of countenance upon hearing the name. They were almost killed by such a terrifying attack back when Shrek Academy was destroyed. No one had expected that rank 9 fixed soul ammunition would appear once again. Meanwhile, the door was pushed open and the amorous Dolor Zongshin walked in from the outside. Zongshin spoke, "Follow me." In truth, the place they were residing in had originally belonged to the Tang sect. Thus, they had never needed to give check-in information. Guided by Zongshin, they entered the underground world once again via a tunnel behind the hotel. However, the place was less sophisticated compared to Heaven Do City. There was only one slightly dim shelter underground. The Shrek 7 monsters, Aruhan, Saima Jinkai as well as the members of the Blood Dragon unit were brought down in succession. Within an hour, the group had already finished assembling. Just as Tang Wulin had predicted, Sky Sea City had already declared martial law and launched its search for the offender across the entire city. Moreover, the information was sealed from the outside so the news of the attack would not spread beyond Sky Sea City itself. Soon, the news came back. The military had launched a comprehensive search and had numerous kinds of large-scale detection equipment. Every soul master with a cultivation base above 3 rings would need to undergo a thorough examination and interrogation from the military to verify their identity in Sky Sea City. On the other hand, the amorous Dolor brought news that gave Tang Wulin pause. According to the military's investigation, the attack was launched by the Star Luo Empire's secret army. "That's impossible," said Tang Wulin resolutely. "Since the Star Luo Empire has made the decision to cooperate with us, why would they go back on their word now? A rank 9 fixed soul ammunition's power is extraordinary, but in reality, it could certainly not cause enough damage to destroy a fleet of carriers. On the contrary, it would only increase the Federation's enmity. At the very least, it would hasten the start of the war. Moreover, bringing rank 9 fixed soul ammunition to the Federation is not an easy task, let alone to Sky Sea City." Amorous Dolor Zongshin nodded. "We understand that it's almost impossible for the Star Luo Empire to launch the attack, but that's not what the military thinks. A battleship is extremely costly. The military is certainly boiling over in rage at the moment and heaving many erroneous ideas at the Star Luo Empire." Tang Wulin frowned deeply. "If it's not Star Luo Empire, who is it then? Is it the Holy Spirit cult?" Zongshin spoke with a deep voice, "I think that there's a good chance it's the Holy Spirit cult. However, there's nothing related to the cult according to the news coming from the military. On the contrary, numerous signs are pointing the finger at the Star Luo Empire." Zongshin spoke with a deep voice, "That's difficult to tell, but the attack really did result in severe losses. The most telling news we've received so far is that the battleship was being overhauled at the time. There was only a skeleton crew of maintenance staff on board, so the casualties were relatively low. There were over 200 people killed. If the entire crew was on board, casualties would certainly have exceeded 3,000. There was a flash of light in Tang Wulin's eyes. Could it be that this was plotted by the military? Zongshin shook his head. No, can't be. The price was too high. The black battleship is genuinely under the Hawk faction's control. The manufacturing cost of such a vessel is too great, the Hawk faction would never consent to destroying one. Thus, the attacker must be someone else. On the other hand, I think that there are very few capable of using rank 9 fixed soul ammunition to launch an attack. Tang Wulin considered before he spoke. We shall wait and see. If this conflict was triggered intentionally to hasten the start of war, someone is certainly aggravating the situation from behind to intensify the attack as soon as possible and gathering forces in public. Have you communicated with the Star Luo and Do Spirit Empires? We should confirm whether it was they who launched the attack first. Long Yushue spoke from the side. It's difficult to tell. I'm afraid that they won't admit to that even if it was their doing. At once, the underground shelter sank into deep silence. Yuan Yehue asked, Your Excellency, will this matter affect our plans to go to the Do Spirit Empire? Zhongshin nodded. It will certainly be affected. The seaport is on complete lockdown. Even though our ship still has access to the sea, most likely we will be discovered. I'm afraid that we will have to wait for the moment. However, if we continue to delay over here while the Federation rushes to war on the other side, it's possible that there's not enough time. Unless... Tang Wulin squinted his eyes. Unless we can prove that the attack is unrelated to the Star Luo and Do Spirit Empires within a short period of time. We can shift the public's and the Federation's attention to prove that this is a fabricated accusation. Yu Jingyu spoke with a frown on his face. Our identity is already very sensitive, so we can't even carry out the investigation. How are we going to do that? Tang Wulin paced back and forth in the room. The amorous Doluo Zhongshin was frowning too. Everything had been going according to plan, but this sudden change could possibly ruin it all and leave them unable to stop the war. After a long while, Tang Wulin suddenly raised his head to look at Long Yushue. Our identity can't be exposed, but what if we are doing this in our Blood God unit's name? The Blood God Army is a secret fighting force that only the high-ranking officials of the Federation are aware of. However, the Blood God Army is a federal army as well, and its position is even higher than other armies of similar rank. We have to take the risk now. Yushue, please contact the army and request their help to work with us. I'll be discussing with His Excellency the Bright Mirror Doluo. All right. It seemed like she always supported Tang Wulin's requests unconditionally. She immediately agreed without the slightest hesitation and headed upstairs to make a call. There was no signal in the underground room. Zhongshin looked at Tang Wulin. Wulin, don't rush into things rashly. Tang Wulin smiled and spoke, we have no choice but to chance it. Otherwise, such a disaster will make our efforts go to waste. We must stop the war from starting too early regardless. Are they not trying to aggravate the situation? Then, we shall give them something to distract their attention. Compared to the Star Luo and Do Spirit Empires, the public still have the most enmity for the Holy Spirit cult's evil soul masters that launched multiple attacks. Big brother, do you have any evidence? Asked Xie Xie. Tang Wulin shrugged. No matter it was that did this, from this point onward, it's all the Holy Spirit cult's fault. We will certainly discover evidence, regardless of where it came from and whether it's real or fake. They are not the only ones capable of fabricating false accusations. After the Great Explosion, all of Sky Sea City had sunk into a tense atmosphere. Civilians refused to leave their homes. For most of the people, it was the first time they had ever felt like a war was about to break out at any moment. Even though the East Sea Fleet had always been stationed at Sky Sea City, the majority of the public had never felt an approaching war before. The loud boom and also the tsunami that almost surged into the city had filled them with fear. Even more people chose to remain at home to watch the news using their soul televisions, so they could follow the development of this event at all times. According to the evidence that has already been discovered, the attack could very possibly have originated from the Star Luo Empire's secret army. The Federation has strongly condemned this act. The military authority has expressed their intentions to take acute retaliatory measures upon valid evidence. News regarding this matter was coming in non-stop. Other than accusations as to who the perpetrator of this attack was, there was also the experts' analysis on the possibility of war, as well as the comparison of military strength between the Federation and the Star Luo Empire and the analysis of military affairs. All the news seemed to be sending out one sole signal, which was that war could begin at any moment. Formed less than 6 months previously, the East Sea Army Corps Joint Command was established after the centralization of the North Sea Fleet, the East Sea Fleet and also the Sea God Fleet, which was ranked first in the Federation, in East Sea City. The Joint Command scope of jurisdiction included 3 fleets and the Army Corps where these fleets were stationed at. The total amount of manpower was over 400,000 soldiers. The so-called Great Army troops of the entire Dolour Federation had the total naval strength of 300,000. On the other hand, more than half of the navy was gathered here. It could be said that the joint command that was built in the East Sea Army Corps had jurisdiction over almost half of the military strength of the entire Federation. At the moment, the joint command was completely silent. An old man with a prominent nose, deep-set eyes, a stern expression and the 3 stars of a general on his shoulders was seated upon the main seat. His aura was as deep as the abyss and it felt like he was too profound to be fathomable. The oppressive atmosphere in the command post was mostly coming from him. The group of soldiers sitting at the 2 sides of the long table were all high-ranking officers with glistening stars on their shoulders. Those with the military rank of Major General could only take the most inferior seats at the table respectfully. Those 2 people seated by his seat were similar to him, as they were both generals. Nevertheless, despite having the same military rank, they appeared much weaker when comparing their auras. According to the Dolour Federation's military appointment, the general was considered the highest military rank available other than the federal marshal that was also awarded the great general military rank. On the other hand, even the position of general was divided into different ranks according to their various duties. There was no doubt that the person capable of sitting on the main seat was naturally the highest-ranking officer in the military. On this day, he was also a formidable personage capable of creating quakes over the 4 great seas in the Federation with just a stamp of his foot. Supreme Commander, according to the current situation, we have narrowed down the attacker to possibly being from the Star Luo Empire's military. We've already launched a comprehensive reconnoiter to search for every possible suspect, said the general sitting by the main seat reverently. The Star Luo Empire? The Supreme Commander sitting on the main seat had a cold expression with a mocking smile in his gaze. His gaze swept past the military officers sitting on the 2 sides of the long table. Are you stupid or are you insulting my intelligence? There's always a purpose when anyone does anything. Fantastic! Why don't you start telling us what was the reason for the Star Luo Empire to launch an attack on us at this time? Also, was it just a coincidence that the targeted battleship was almost entirely unmanned? All of you are so good at making decisions, right? Old Shu, the battleship was yours. Tell me. The Supreme Commander was speaking to one of the generals sitting by the main seat. The general had a similarly unpleasant expression. A black battleship was unimaginably expensive. The manufacturing cost of this vessel was reaching astronomical figures even before it was fully armed. As the recently appointed regimental commander of the North Sea Army Corps, General Xu Yangyun, formerly the Deputy Minister of the Federal Military Staff, his mood at present was definitely beyond terrible. Thorough investigation. We must investigate thoroughly. We shall get to the bottom of this at all costs. Xu Yangyun slapped the table at once. The Supreme Commander looked at his flushed face and nodded. It's true that you do need to investigate this matter thoroughly. First, we shall begin by examining ourselves. Which general is in charge of the Federal Fleet's radar troop? A Major General sitting farther back stood up, his face ghastly pale as he saluted. Reporting to the Supreme Commander. It's me. Arrest him, said the Supreme Commander with a calm expression. Immediately, 2 burly soldiers entered from the outside and lifted the Major General bodily. Supreme Commander, I'm innocent. I had nothing to do with this. The Major General was immediately scared out of his wits, for he was well aware of this Supreme Commander's strong will. It was all over for him if he was captured. Incompetence and negligence. These 2 words are enough to convict you. Take him away for interrogation. The Supreme Commander convicted this man with just a few simple remarks. At once, the rest of the generals sat upright and straightened their backs. Many of them were sweating, and even the North Sea Army Corps Regimental Commander Xu Yangyun with his flushed face earlier had a change of countenance as well. After all, it would not be easy to punish a person with a major general rank despite the punishment being meted out by a superior. Nonetheless, the person who was sitting on the main seat before them was different. Although he was only a general, his authority was, in a sense, greater than the federal marshal. He had a few other identities that would startle the entire Federation. The Sea God Army's regimental commander. The War God Hall's Hall Master. A limit de law. Any of these identities would be considered as of the highest grade in the entire Federation. In addition, he held the posts concurrently. The Supreme Commander was one of the representatives of the Hawk faction. However, there were different factions within the Hawk faction itself, and this person belonged to the strongest and toughest faction. Regardless of who the person is and for whatever the reason, the military will find the person bold enough to attack the Federal fleet. Reporting, sir. Meanwhile, a security officer shouted aloud at the door. The Supreme Commander's face darkened. What is it? The security officer walked over in quick strides. He stood upright before he saluted. Reporting to the Supreme Commander. There's a troop of soldiers dressed in peculiar military uniforms out in the barracks. They said they are the specially appointed inspectors sent by the federal headquarters. They received news that the fleet was attacked, so they are here for an investigation. Specially appointed inspectors sent by the federal headquarters. Chen Xinjie's expression darkened. Bring the leader into the room. I'd like to see the inspector who is sent by the Federation. The remaining of the Joint Command generals were baffled by the situation. The Federation sent over inspectors? Was it intentionally targeted at the fleet's Joint Command? According to the military rules, there was a special unit in charge of supervising the existing combat unit. However, the rules were different for the Joint Fleet. The Supreme Commander of the Joint Fleet was the current War God Hall's Hall Master, the boundless Sea Lord Chen Xinjie. Who had the audacity to invade his territory? Were these people out to dig their own graves, especially when he was infuriated? No one would dare question Chen Xinjie's authority even if he had shot 1 or 2 men due to his current position in the military. It was not long before a youth dressed in a white military uniform walked into the room led by a security officer. The youth was tall and huge with wide shoulders. He had an elegant, handsome appearance and had a dignified air about him. He was about 28 years old. His snow-white military uniform was so neatly pressed that there were hardly any creases. A general's stars adorned the epaulets on each side of his shoulders. His heroic spirit was overbearing. He followed closely behind the security officer as he stepped into the command post. Even though he was in the presence of dozens of generals, he did not flinch a bit. He walked in great strides until he was 5 meters away from Chen Xinjie. His right hand clenched into a fist before he thumped his fist against his chest. He saluted Chen Xinjie with a peculiar military salutation. Chen Xinjie suddenly realized when he saw the military uniform on the man. He became acutely aware of the newcomer's identity after observing the military salutation. However, he frowned soon after. Since when did the Army Corps join the Supervisory Division? Our respected Supreme Commander, I'm from the Supervisory Division of the Federal Military's headquarters. I'm the Special Correspondent and my code name is Blood Dragon. Most of the generals were expecting Chen Xinjie to have an outburst. Surprisingly, he did not. Chen Xinjie looked at the young man who was unwavering before him. He spoke with a deep voice. Where are you from, huh? Blood Dragon answered, we were not in charge of supervising the Joint Fleet initially, but we suspect that the Joint Fleet's attack is related to the case that we are currently investigating. Sky Sea City is under lockdown at present. It impacts our operation to a certain extent, so we're requesting an interrogation. If it's possible, I wish to discuss it with you in private. Upon hearing him, the rest of the soldiers were relieved. If they were truly sent by the Federal Supervisory Division to monitor them, it would seem a little too soon since the explosion just occurred. Where did such a young Major General come from? He was so calm and collected as he spoke to the boundless Lord Chen Xinjie. It was enough to make them fear him. Not everyone was capable of behaving so calmly in front of the boundless Sea Lord. Chen Xinjie spoke, take him for a rest first. We'll discuss later. As he was speaking, he signaled for the security officer to take Blood Dragon to another room. Xu Yangyun looked toward Chen Xinjie. Supreme Commander, is he from there? The major generals and lieutenant generals could not identify the Blood Dragon. However, as a general himself, he knew about the many federal secrets, so he could, at least, recognize the person a little. Chen Xinjie nodded. Most probably. I shall inquire later to find out if he's from there. If he is, then he's not related to us. Perhaps, he can provide some information on this. Xu Yangyun nodded. If he's from there, then we can't neglect him. Their contribution to the Federation is tremendous. I've heard that. Chen Xinjie raised his hand to stop Xu Yangyun from continuing. Xu Yangyun noticed that the person sitting opposite him was the East Sea Army Corps Regimental Commander, General Xu Ming, who was recently promoted. He appeared a little confused. Xu Ming also realized that the Major General dressed in white earlier would most likely be connected to the military secrets. As a newly promoted general, he had yet to learn the secrets. The Blood Dragon was brought to another reception room. He took a seat on the sofa as he surveyed the room. The room was not luxurious, but it could be considered exquisite. The door frame was engraved from wood, while the wooden furniture made the room appear antique. It did not look like a general's office, but it was aesthetically pleasing. The Blood Dragon closed his eyes to rest his spirit. He pondered over his behavior upon arriving here to ensure that he had not revealed any flaws. Undoubtedly, Tang Wulin was the Blood Dragon. He took a risk with this trip, but he was feeling rather confident. Most importantly, he could not allow the matter to be under the Hawk faction's control, otherwise there could possibly be trouble. Thus, he made plans to come over along with his comrades. Before he came, he had made adequate preparations. The Joint Command's meeting did not last long, for the core decision had already been made. They would carry out the investigation thoroughly to find the rascal. On the other hand, the Federation had already accused the distant Star Luo Empire of being behind the attack. The approval rating of the Hawk faction would certainly increase immensely. The cries for a war to be waged had already begun to stir the air. When Chen Xinjie walked into his office, he saw Tang Wulin sitting there in repose. His back was upright. His white military uniform complemented his overbearing heroic spirit. It had been 4 hours since they first met. Chen Xinjie nodded in secret. This person deserved the Blood God Army's reputation. He was not arrogant nor rash. No wonder he was capable of becoming a major general at such a young age. However, Chen Xinjie was astonished that he was incapable of seeing through Tang Wulin's cultivation base. He sensed that Tang Wulin's soul power fluctuation was below 8 rings, yet there seemed to be another type of energy fluctuation which was obscure but even more powerful. It was difficult to detect, but definitely not weak. Chen Xinjie could tell from his blood essence fluctuation and the details of his skeleton that the young man before him was rather impressive in having such achievements at a tender age. Tang Wulin felt something vaguely, so he retracted his aura. He opened his eyes to see the boundless Sea Doluo Chen Xinjie's gazing at him. Supreme Commander. Tang Wulin immediately stood up and saluted Chen Xinjie once again. Young man, do you know what my reaction was when I first saw you? Chen Xinjie's voice sounded gloomy and cold. Tang Wulin shook his head. I don't know. I should execute you by shooting. The reply from Chen Xinjie sounded as if there was a soul beam rifle being pointed at Tang Wulin's forehead. A powerful spiritual overbearingness was upon Tang Wulin instantaneously. The pressure was suffocating for Tang Wulin. It felt like an endless, mighty torrent which was going to crush him into fragments completely. It was a spiritual domain. Tang Wulin immediately knew that the limit Doluo before him had unleashed the spiritual domain. If not for his previous experience of the spiritual domain unleashed by the light dark Doluo Long Yue, he would have been incapable of enduring the present attack. However, he had continued his cultivation to elevate his spiritual power, which had already achieved the spirit domain realm. Even though Tang Wulin had yet to comprehend his spiritual domain, his defense was rather powerful. The spiritual overbearingness only lasted for a short while. A sense of astonishment flashed past Chen Xinjie's face. That's the spirit domain realm. You've got the spiritual power of the spirit domain, huh? Tang Wulin felt his chest tighten. He did not manage to conceal his spirit domain spiritual power due to the suppression of the other person's spiritual domain. It was getting a little troublesome for him as this limit Dolor was paying too much attention to him. The man before Tang Wulin was the current Hall Master of the War God Hall. Although Tang Wulin's makeup was flawless, his identity might be revealed if the limit Dolor scrutinized him. Chen Xinjie's gaze was as sharp as a knife. If everyone from the Hawk faction was described as an eagle, then he was most certainly the Eagle King amongst the eagles. Let alone a major general, even a general of the same rank would find it hard to resist his powerful influence. However, the youth before Chen Xinjie appeared to be calm and composed. Chen Xinjie's aura remained powerful, but he was surprised at the same time. It was apparent that the young man was barely 30 years old, yet he possessed the spirit domain's spiritual power. It was unprecedented. Even when he was at the youth's age, he was far weaker than his current realm. Spiritual power elevation was different from soul power elevation. There are times one could rely on consuming some heaven and earth treasures to assist in the elevation of the soul power cultivation base. As for spiritual power elevation, one could only accumulate and cultivate one's spiritual power. In addition, one would need to be bestowed with truly powerful natural endowments in order to charge at the spirit domain realm. Only a handful of the known heaven and earth treasures were capable of directly elevating one's spiritual power. The young man named Blood Dragon who stood before him had a spiritual power cultivation base that was strong and steady. He had not just entered the spirit domain realm, but had already acquired a certain level of comprehension toward the spirit domain realm. Apparently, Chen Xinjie was even more astonished. He was aware of the significance of the spiritual power at this level. Barring any unforeseen circumstances, this young man would certainly be a peerless powerhouse in the future. As a high-ranking officer of the Federation, his position as the War God Hall's Hall Master was higher than a general by a rank, as the War God Hall represented the most powerful force in the Federation. The outside world had no knowledge of some of the secrets which existed. For example, the divine mecha controlled by the Federation would only be available to the War God Hall. It was an untold secret. Each year, the Federation's investment in the War God Hall was astronomical. The War God Hall's position was unmoved regardless of any changes in the federal parliament. Other than the boundless Sidolu or Chen Xinjie, only a few people knew how powerful the War God Hall's true abilities were. The outside world only knew about the 18 war gods of the War God Hall. Are you the successor groomed by Zhong Huanyun? Or the successor to Blood One? Asked Chen Xinjie indifferently. Tang Wulin spoke. Supreme Commander, I'm not here to discuss this issue. Would you like to listen to our investigation of the attack? Chen Xinjie raised his brows ever so slightly. No one had the audacity to speak to him in such a manner. He could see the power and confidence in Tang Wulin's eyes. Young man, do you know this place? Asked Chen Xinjie coldly. Tang Wulin smiled calmly. It's your office. Chen Xinjie sneered coldly. Your identity is fake. The special correspondent is fake. The Federal Supervisory Division would never send someone over to my place, not unless they don't want to live anymore. Tang Wulin was stunned for a moment. He did not expect Chen Xinjie to be contemptuous and cunning. At the same time, he was surprised at his awesome power. He had done some background check on Chen Xinjie prior to his visit. Even though he was a leader of the Hawk faction, he was virtuous and strict. He would never be involved in any unwholesome activity. For this reason, Tang Wulin insisted on taking this trip. The Blood God Army would not meddle with the Supervisory Division. Thus, my first reaction upon listening to you was to execute you by shooting. You're quite bold. You have the audacity to make your way to the Joint Command. You even snuck your way past the checkpoints to see me. You're considered quite capable. That's why I'm giving you this opportunity. Tell me, what's your purpose? Tang Wulin remained calm and unhurried despite Chen Xinjie's overbearing and oppressive gaze. He was not alarmed in spite of what Chen Xinjie said. I'm aware I can't hide my identity from you. I'm sure you can tell by a glance that I didn't come from some supervisory division. I used the name of the supervisory division because I hope to at least get the opportunity to meet you, said Tang Wulin naturally. Oh. Chen Xinjie's gaze moved ever so slightly. Do you know that I can have you court-martialed for your behavior? Tang Wulin smiled. I know you won't. Speak then, you only have one opportunity to convince me. Chen Xinjie walked to the sofa and took a seat. In secret, Tang Wulin felt relieved. He knew Chen Xinjie was not only powerful but a sensible person as well. He could be unyielding and cunning as a fox at times. At present, he was one of the mightiest in today's world. He was at the same rank with the following luminaries, namely, Shrek Academy's Atlas Dolo Yunming, who was the Sea God's Pavilion Master, the Spirit Pagoda's Pagoda Master Qiangu Dongfeng, and the Tang Sect Dolo Hall's Hall Master Heartless Dolo. I can only discuss this matter with you alone. If you have any audio monitoring equipment in this room, I'd suggest that you turn it off. This matter is at the highest security level of the Federation. I'm only allowed to speak to you after being authorized by Blood One and the Regimental Commander Zhong. Tang Wulin's expression turned solemn as his gaze dimmed. Chen Xinjie spoke indifferently. I don't have any audio monitoring equipment, for I don't need to justify my actions all this while. Thus, please speak your mind. Tang Wulin's lips cracked into a faint smile. He put his palms together in front of his chest. Each time a radiance flickered in his eyes, the air would waver slightly. Supreme Commander, I'm sure you know about the existence of the Abyssal Plane. Recently, an unprecedented abyssal tide appeared which, I'm sure, the military had received news of it too. The Blood God Army requested reinforcements from the military. Chen Xinjie nodded. However, the issue was resolved soon after, right? How was it different from the other abyssal tides from the past? Tang Wulin's gaze was fixated. There's a difference, an immense difference. There were more than 10 abyssal kings that participated in the abyssal tide, including monarch-ranked powerhouses. It was even more terrifying that the Lord of the Abyssal Plane, known as the Abyssal Sage King, made a move too. Chen Xinjie stood upright abruptly, for he truly had no idea regarding the matter. The Blood God Army had not reported it to their superior nor at the parliamentary level. It was classified as top secret. Abyssal Sage King? Tang Wulin nodded strenuously. Yes, the Abyssal Sage King that had never appeared before, even when the Abyssal Passage took form 6,000 years ago, made a move this time. The Blood God Army was almost annihilated. The Abyssal Sage King represented the strength of the entire Abyssal Plane. That's impossible. Chen Xinjie spoke. After all, it is a rivalry between the two planes and we're the home court. The pressure from our plane itself would have rendered the Abyssal Plane incapable of taking in so many powerhouses. This video will end here. Like video and subscribe to my channel.